Welcome to the old school meeting of Overeaters Anonymous, which features speakers with long-term abstinence. This meeting was born online, and it's going to stay that way. That means you can attend live on Tuesday evenings at 6:30 Pacific if you'd like to. Go to the Los Angeles Intergroup's webpage at oalaig.org for login information. And now, our speaker.
I am Karenina. I'm a compulsive eater, and I'm happy to be here. I've never been to this meeting, and in person or on Zoom. And thank you, Mary Pat, for asking me to speak. Thank you all for being here, participating in recovery with me. It's such a joy that I get to do this and that we get to do it together. And, you know, they say that these diseases of addiction and of isolation, you know, that the solution, the 12 steps, the spiritual solution, not only does it bring us closer to a higher power of our understanding, but it brings us out of that isolation and into each other. And we can't do it alone. And the very first word of the first step is we. For many years, I've been in program since 2001. And for many years, I would, recite my steps, and I would say, I admitted I'm powerless. And then I'd correct myself, and I'd go back and I'd say, we admitted. And, I'm struggling a little bit with the we these days. I'm having trouble making my outreach calls. And it's really like, it's like silly that it's a struggle, because it's a pleasure to talk to you all. It's a pleasure, and it's a necessity. So I am a real compulsive eater. I've had struggles with food and weight and isolation as long as I can remember. I have a cute little album that I made years ago. I came in at over 100 pounds overweight, and I was struck abstinent. It was quite miraculous. You all told me I had a disease, and I was relieved, because that meant that it wasn't my fault, that I didn't just have weakness and no willpower. And that's what I thought, because I had tried to deal with my problem through dieting and through control and through all sorts of things for many years. I was put on my first diet at 8 years old. But I can't find that little album that I would bring to in-person meetings, but I just found the album that I made on my device. And so I just pulled it up on my iPad. So I don't know if it'll work. I don't know if you can see this or not. Can you all see what it was like, or probably too much glare? I don't know. It's probably terrible. Let's see. Now, what's that telling me? It's worth a try. I was just another person. I was like another person inside of this person. This is me at a bridal shower for myself before I was getting married. This is me with my daughter, who's now, going to be 30 years old this year. And now I'm sorry, the technology, I'm not doing great. So this is me with my current husband and our grandbaby. I've been living in a healthy body for over 20 years, thanks to Overeaters Anonymous. And the healthy body is one of the results of working the program. And we read the definition of abstinence, it's or I read it. Did we read it? I'm in a little blur. But, it's that, working towards and maintaining a healthy body, avoiding compulsive foods and compulsive food behaviors. For years, that was my abstinence. But I used to say, I'm to the best of my ability, because I just didn't do it perfectly. I avoided my alcoholic foods. Mine were the same as many of yours. I avoided the sugars and the flours and the white foods and the things like that, because those foods made me hungrier. I worked the steps. I got a sponsor. I had a spiritual awakening. It was really quite miraculous. And it was a slow process. I was struck abstinent, but it was a slow process. It took me a couple years to get through my steps, but I was always doing something. But I also became a professional. I got my nursing degree. I was raising a young daughter. I had a lot of things going on. And I just kept doing it, and I kept showing up, and I called you guys. I used my tools like the lifelines that they are. I went to meetings whenever I could. I, did reading and writing, and I memorized all the prayers that we have in here, and I memorized them by writing them down and then reciting them. And that's just what worked for me. And then once I had them memorized, I would write them out, because just saying them somehow just saying them didn't feel like enough to me. So I would write them out. It was this like beautiful process for me. And then I wrote my own prayers. I wrote my own like individual personal prayers and would read those. And I did affirmations, and I just did so much because I really liked what you all showed me was possible here. I really liked learning how to be with feelings as an addict. And I have had this disease since I was young. As an addict, I ate to not feel feelings. And you all taught me that I didn't have to be alone with feelings, that I can't deal with these feelings that overwhelm me alone, that I needed this format of the steps to connect to a higher power, to learn how to access that higher power. And I also had to run it all by you all, because there's a line I just read. I'm doing my 11th step. I'm doing my steps over. And the line, it said something like, we have to watch out for it was deluding ourselves. I can't remember. I was saying it to my sponsor this morning, but it's like we have to be careful when we're thinking we're connecting to our higher power, that we might be deluding ourselves with well-intended ideas. And I just think that's just so interesting that I need to keep running things by someone. I was in here for a long time, and what I did, my kind of like 9/10 measures worked really well for me. And then I slacked off a little bit, and there was a variety of reasons for that. Um, I stopped going to my in-person meetings very much. I grew up in the San Fernando Valley, and I moved back to the Valley right when I came into program in 2001. And I felt like I really grew up in these 7:30 a.m. meetings in the Valley. They just taught me so much. And then I moved to Santa Barbara when I married my second husband, and I went to meetings every day off that I had. I went to meetings were so valuable to me. And then at a certain point, I got tired of being in small town meetings. I got tired of being like the only abstinent person in the room, or I got tired of just not a lot of recovery. And it's just so egotistical that I would even say that now. Like, it's so self-centered that I stopped going to these meetings, and I like justified it by thinking I need to go where the recovery is. And so I did a lot. I started just going to telephone meetings. And what happened at telephone meetings is that I stopped raising my hand. And this was like a very slow process over the years, maybe 3 years. And then I'm just going to let my dog in. Hold on. I just kind of did the program less with you all. And I, let me just refocus. What happened eventually is that it led to a relapse. I had a really significant snowballing, landsliding relapse in 2023. It was shortly after my father died. And I had been like, a relapse doesn't happen in a moment or a bite for me. There was a lot of prelapse happening. And even though I was still living by so many of these principles, I was still embracing the program, and I was kind of riding on this bank account for quite a long time because I filled it up with so much recovery. And I still kept doing quite a lot, but I didn't do everything. And it's almost like we need to do everything here. I stopped sponsoring as much as I had been because I wasn't at a lot of meetings. So I wasn't meeting people, and I wasn't raising my hand. So people weren't asking me to sponsor, and like slowly kind of slipped away. I started playing around with food. It was here and there. And I never like fell face first into it. I might have a slip or a little binge, and this is just my truth. And this happened over the years. And I don't like telling you this, but I'm going to tell you that that's what I did. And I felt like it was like my marriage, like a program was like a marriage. And this is funny that I'm on my second marriage, but when you're married and you're committed, like I'm not always the best wife, but if I'm not a good wife one day, I show up the next day. Like I don't stop being married. I don't start over and find a new husband. And that's how I felt about my program. I didn't do it great this day, but I'm right back on that commitment. And that worked for me for a long time. And I lived in a healthy body weight. I had a lot of serenity. Things in my life were unfolding until it didn't, until after my dad died and I wasn't sponsoring, I didn't have a sponsor, I wasn't doing regular 10 steps. Things fell apart. Things really fell apart. The occasional slip turned into a full-blown binge. And I couldn't show up to meetings binging. I was able to show up when I just slipped here and there, but
You
I
have 8
couldn't show up
minutes.
to meetings when I was binging. Thank you. So I left program. I didn't like make any big pronouncements. I didn't tell anyone I left program. I just stopped going to meetings. I stopped calling you. I stopped. And because I was at Zoom meetings before that, not showing up, people didn't know I wasn't doing well. There's so many Zoom meetings out there, and I would go to the ones that fit into my schedule, and then I just wasn't there. And I would get calls to speak, and people would reach out to me, and I always like kept with these principles of honesty, and I would call people back and I would say, thank you, I'm not in program right now, but I wouldn't necessarily say I'm in a relapse. I don't know when all that happened. Thank you, God, I hit another bottom. I rapidly gained 35 pounds. I rapidly gained lots of other things too. My grief was not being expressed in a healthful way. I was just eating once again to not feel. I was eating to not feel grief, to not feel resentment, to not feel so much. When my father was on his deathbed, I have a daughter who I'm estranged from, she didn't speak to me. And I felt like through my father's death, I'm a medical professional. I was able to help my family and help him, and he really trusted me. And I ended up being like his death doula almost. And it was actually a beautiful experience. I was still connected to you all, and you all got me through that. I called everyone from the ICU. I stepped away. I did the deal. And I shared with you and cried with you that my daughter turned her back on me while my father was dying, these really painful things. And I had been dealing with her estrangement at that point for 8 years, and now it's 10 years. I'd been dealing with it for a long time, and I knew that I could get through so many things. But what I hadn't dealt with in so long was just such intense resentments towards my brothers for showing up the way they did or didn't, towards my sister, I don't even know. I'm still unraveling it. I did a really thorough 4th step again when I came back. I'm so grateful you all were still here when I came back, that these rooms were still going, that people in my small town Santa Barbara meetings where there's not a lot of recovery, it's just so terrible to say that, they're still showing up. They're still keeping the seat warm for newcomers. And, somebody kept the seat warm for me. So I came back. I, took a newcomer chip at a meeting that I've taken a 20-year plus chip for. And I just told you all what I had been doing, what I had been doing was eating and not feeling and not talking to my higher power and not talking to you all. So when I came back and I found, I cleared my brain pretty quickly. In about 2 weeks, I had been binging on so much sugar. It was like sugar and wheat thins, basically, ice cream and wheat thins. It was like, my body was so inflamed. I was in so much physical pain and none of my clothes fit. So I was depressed from not feeling, because when you don't feel grief and you don't feel resentment, guess what? You also block joy. You block happiness. You block access to all good things. Like feelings come as an entire package. Yesterday, I was on a walk. I've been abstinent now and recovered for a year and a half again. I was on a walk. The sun was shining and I was walking the dog and I'm like, oh, I'm joyful. And I thought, what am I doing? Why am I so joyful? And there was this moment where I was kind of grasping, like, oh, how do I keep this? How do I get this again? What's the formula? And like that's not, being present with the moment, that's like future. Like I want to keep this. And how I keep it is being open to my full spectrum of emotions, being open to doing all 12 steps, not just picking and choosing. How I keep it is by, just increasing my conscious contact with God, keeping my food clean, using all the tools. I need all the tools. The tools aren't the program, but the tools support my program. The tools enhance my program. The tools are tremendous. I get to feel like spontaneous joy. I also get to feel angst. As a compulsive eater, I feel like I grew up and maintained and still have to some degree kind of a lot of low level anxiety. And I used to snack to just like be like that anesthesia, like a low level anesthesia, just a little sedative. And now I don't get that. Like I eat my 3 meals. I eat a snack if I'm hungry. I don't eat a snack because I'm nervous. When I'm nervous, I make an outreach call to you all. I put beautiful things in a God box. I've never had a God box before, but my sponsor said she had one. So I see I have 2 minutes left. So I'm going to say, when I came back and I got abstinent again, it felt like the most precious thing. It felt so much more precious than 24 years ago. They say that, the first abstinence is a gift, and the second one or the next one, the following ones, you have to fight for. I have to fight for this one every day, but it doesn't feel like a battle. It feels like I'm doing things that I've never done before. I'm emailing my sponsor every night. I, for whatever reason, for 20 plus years, like had a program and just did what I did. And, I knew what my alcoholic foods were and I mostly stayed away from them and nobody knew what I was eating. Today, my sponsor knows exactly what I'm eating. She doesn't know, like I don't weigh and measure personally everything that I put in my mouth. But when I do weigh and measure something, I tell her that. I had some shame about weighing and measuring. It was a funny thing. I have some shame right now about my weight. I realize I haven't reported my weight to my sponsor in a while.
1 minute.
I lost 25 pounds in the last year and a half, or in the last year, and then I've maintained it for the last 6 months. I'm hoping to lose more. I still have, 10 pounds is 2 sizes of clothes. And it's not because of the clothes. It's because there's a part of me that thinks I'd feel better in my body, not just look better, but feel better. And the look, how someone looks like, I really want to get away from how I look and turn to like, this is a spiritual program. How does God want me to be in the world? How does Goddess want me to be to the world? How does my spirit of the universe want me to be in the world? Not what size my jeans are. I really, as a woman of this culture, have struggled a lot with body image. As a woman of this culture, I've also been a victim of sexual abuse. I'll say that because I think it's important that many of us 100-pounders have a history, and that history can be healed through love and acceptance and therapy. I've done a lot of outside work. That is my time. I realize I'm not like, it's a little bit of a blur that I just spoke for 18 minutes, but I'm just so happy to be here. And I'm so happy to know that I don't have to do this alone and that I can't do it alone and that I don't have to do it alone. So again, thank you all for sharing in this journey of recovery. And I look forward to hearing what you all have to say.